If you want to get through the afternoon without crashing and to keep your energy and your focus stable throughout the entire day, I'm going to show you the exact mechanism that controls how your cells manage energy. And by the end of this video, you'll understand how the whole system fits together and the next steps that you can take so you can begin to start feeling better. There is so much misinformation out there. Quick fixes and plans and supplements. These alone will never fix the underlying problem. So tell me if you recognize this pattern, because I have seen it over and over again with my patients. These are the high functioning people who are sharp in the morning, but completely depleted by 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Online, so many experts are saying that it's stress or it's cortisol alone. But I'm here to show you that the real clue is found in the interaction between cortisol, which raises our blood sugar, and insulin, which lowers and stores it. And when these two systems fall out of sync, your mitochondria literally run out of the supplies that they need to make energy for the body. And that's when your afternoon crash begins. I'm Scott Resnick. I'm making the videos in this YouTube channel to bring my 30 years of medical practice to help you to cut through the noise of natural medicine, so you can begin to regain your energy and your strength and your vitality. So the afternoon crash is one of the most common patterns that I have seen in my patients, and it results from an imbalance between cortisol and insulin. So let's start fixing it. The physiology that drives the afternoon slump is backed by a very clear pattern, and it almost always involves 3 systems working together. These are fuel supply, fuel delivery, and fuel regulation. First, we need our fuel supplies, which are our micronutrients. These are things like fats and carbs and proteins. These feed our metabolic machinery. And then secondly, we need to deliver this energy to our cells. And insulin is the hormonal key that opens that door. And finally, we need to regulate and monitor this balance and how our energy is utilized. And this is done by cortisol. When these 3 systems, supply, delivery, and regulation, fall out of sync, your cells begin to run out of usable energy. And once you understand how these systems interact with one another, not only does that afternoon crash make perfect sense, but you'll have the tools that you need to turn it around. Every cell in your body needs energy to function, and this is obtained from a molecule known as ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. Now, ATP is the end product of all of the metabolic processes in your mitochondria. It's the golden ticket to all life and health. Your brain needs ATP energy to think. Your muscles need ATP energy to move, and your organs need ATP-driven energy to properly function. And that mitochondrial energy system depends on these 3 things: supply, delivery, and regulation. Now, 2 of our foundational hormones, which are cortisol and insulin, do the majority of the heavy lifting here. Because when you think of fuel supply, think macronutrients, proteins, carbs, and fats. Now, the mitochondria convert these nutrients into ATP, but when the fuel supply becomes unstable, our energy production drops. And it should be no surprise to know that our brain is one of the first organs to be affected. Do you remember how in high school science you were taught that mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell? Proteins, carbohydrates, and fats are broken down and enter the mitochondrial machinery as a molecule of glucose. Actually, the molecule is known as pyruvate, which is basically a glucose molecule which is split in half. But either way, the end product is ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and this is a package of energy that is used by every single cell in the entire body. But the mitochondria don't work in isolation, because they depend on several foundational systems as well. They need adequate nutrients, especially the B vitamins. They require antioxidants, magnesiums, and metals like iron and copper. Mitochondria require proper thyroid signaling to regulate their metabolic rate and just the right amount of cortisol and insulin. And of course, mitochondria suffer when the body is exposed to toxins and inflammations and other hormonal imbalances. Mitochondrial energy production is not measured from just one laboratory value or assessed by just one system. It comes from an entire set of biological systems that are working together. We perceive these lapses of energy as symptoms, things like fatigue and brain fog or the need to take a mid-afternoon nap. So, now that we have glucose in the bloodstream, how does that fuel get into the cell? The hormone insulin directs glucose to move from the bloodstream into your cells. And here's a critical point, because when insulin signaling stops working well, glucose may be present in your bloodstream, but it lacks the ability to actually get inside of our cells to access the mitochondria and to keep them working well. Fuel regulation depends on the hormone cortisol, and cortisol dictates how the body metabolizes fuel. When our blood glucose drops, cortisol rises to release stored energy. But when cortisol stays elevated, it interferes and destabilizes the entire system because it impedes with how insulin works. So now when fuel supply and delivery and regulation fall out of sync, your cells are unable to produce energy in a stable fashion, and that instability is what produces the afternoon crash. So now that you understand what causes it, what can you do to actually fix this pattern? Now I'm going to show you the exact protocol that I've used with my patients for decades. And the first step is to stabilize the fuel supply. You need to prioritize real food, get adequate protein, eat healthy fats, and measure and monitor the levels of your micronutrients. These are things like iron and iodine and magnesium. And of course, avoid all of the processed foods with its chemicals and toxins that in turn disrupt how your mitochondria work. Now, the second step is to improve your fuel delivery by stabilizing insulin. And the simplest way to do this is to avoid large blood sugar swings from refined carbohydrates and sugary foods. Focus on a balanced diet that's higher in protein and fats and vegetables. Choose more low glycemic index foods like complex grains and starches that break down more slowly in your bloodstream. Lower carbs require less insulin, and less insulin makes the whole system work better. Now, the third step to fixing things is probably the hardest, and here we have to regulate our cortisol production. This is done with adequate sleep and movement and exercise, exposure to light, stress management, and maintaining a steady supply of fuel in your bloodstream. All of these influence how cortisol regulates your energy. So now when supply and delivery and regulation begin working together, your cells finally have the stable, accessible energy that they need and that they were designed to use. And that afternoon crash begins to disappear. And if you want to understand exactly where your own energy systems stand, I'd recommend that you start with my free 2-minute functional health assessment listed in the description below. 2 minutes, 5 simple at-home measurements, and 1 clear starting point.